And we are live.
Oh, happy Monday, everyone. Welcome to our first episode of Pláticas Poderosas for this new season that we are in. Um, for folks who joined us last year, that was our first season. Now we're in our second season, first episode. So welcome. My name is Angelica, one of the school counselors.
Hello, hello, everybody. Happy Monday. Happy fall 2025 semester. My name is Manny. I am your co-host for Pláticas Poderosas. Super excited to be here with everyone for our first episode of the new academic year. Super happy and ready to go. And hopefully, we get into a couple things today. Me and Angelica are going to be talking about some interesting, informative, and important topics. So hopefully, you enjoy our episode today.
Yeah, and you'll get to learn a little bit more about Manny and I and our journey, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We're going to be getting into a little bit more about our story, as it relates to Latinx heritage, as it relates to, our educational experiences and some of the things that we went through. And, maybe you hear something and you relate to it. Um, I think that's another key element of the Platica series, right? Just kind of seeing who your counselors are, who the people are within the Skyline community that you can, have as, those representations of some of the things that you might be experiencing. So, yeah.
Cool. So yeah, thank you all for listening in. I hope you all are comfy wherever you're at or um but know that you belong here today. And I guess so before getting started into our plática, we wanted to get started with a little bit more insight into Latinx Heritage Month, which we are currently in right now. So happy Latinx Heritage Month. Um, this presentation. So you may be wondering, what is Latinx Heritage Month? So it takes place every year from September 15th to October 15th, and really a time to recognize and celebrate our rich cultures, histories, and the contributions of Latinx communities. It honors folks with roots across Latin America, including Mexico, Central America, South America, and the Caribbean. So an opportunity to really uplift the diverse voices and stories that make up our community because we are not a monolithic group. We are so diverse and of course more than just a month, and I think a reminder of how Latinx individuals have shaped and contributed to our communities, to this country. And I think important to talk about now more than ever with the social political climate. Um, yeah, so just a reminder of how we continue to do amazing and very inspirational things.
Yeah, absolutely, Angelica. I think that you touched on some really good points there. First and foremost, it's super important to have this month and this time frame to just kind of recognize, like you said, some of those, our history, our culture, our contributions to the U.S. society as a whole. It just I think that we've always been here. We've always been doing what we need to do in order to advance and to put ourselves in these positions, but not always have we been recognized. And like you said, especially with the current political climate, with the current administration and all these different things, oftentimes it's easy to forget why it is that we're doing what we're doing, or we get overlooked. But it's important to voice and to, sit in our power because we do have a lot of power, right? And we've been making significant contributions as a whole within society. A little bit about like the historical background as it relates to Latinx Heritage Month. We it wasn't always a thing, right? It wasn't always a thing, but like through the work of various advocates and folks that were kind of going through the experiences, they were able to um fight for this recognition. It Hispanic Heritage or Latinx Heritage Month, it originated in 1968 as part as Hispanic Heritage Week under President Lyndon B. Johnson, but then it extended into a month-long celebration, right, under Ronald Reagan. And it coincides with the independence days of several Latin American countries, including Mexico, Chile, Central America, and Central American nations, right? So there's so much to Latinx Heritage Month within its importance, and um, I think I can't stress it enough. Like I'm super proud of my roots and my history, and I think that more people should be, researching and well versed within like, why it is that we even recognize and celebrate.
Mhm. Very, yeah, like I think it's always a good time to kind of pause and reflect um and I think a lot about even now of like our cultures and that we come from people who have always found a way, regardless of the challenges and obstacles, that we've always found a way to dream big, to thrive. And things I'm constantly remembering when I'm facing certain challenges or obstacles that I carry with me all of that, my ancestors and family, right, that have always found a way to dream big. So when we're talking about Latinx identity, just as an FYI, we're using, well, I at least use like the term Latinx to intentionally be inclusive, especially when it comes with gender identity. So it's a way of honoring the full spectrum of who we are and encompasses, um, right, like language, class, immigration status, and region, from Afro-Latinx communities to our indigenous roots. Um, so a way to kind of highlight again the spectrum, but that's kind of a little bit around Latinx identity. Um, so for folks, right, if you kind of want to reflect as well around, I don't know, right around like your own, how you define Latinx identity or the terms that you all use as well, right, could be a good time to um, reclaim, reflect, right? Redefine who you are and with your culture and the terms that you use as well. But I know myself, I use Latinx, Latina a lot. Those are kind of the terms that I use to identify Chicana as well.
Mhm. Yeah, and at the end of the day, I think it's about, what people are yes, obviously like the importance of language and inclusivity within like these social movements and um like recognizing that there's a reason for, the different terms and I also think that it's about, comfort and what you what you yourself identify with, right? And being able to speak to, like you said, like for example, me, like I use the various terms, Latinx. I when I describe myself, I say Latino. So it's really about
Yeah,
like what it is that, you know, you feel comfortable with as well, kind of speaking to.
for
But
sure.
these are some of like the different like language and identity terms that you can kind of utilize when speaking about, your roots, your history, even, Latinx Heritage Month, so on and so forth, right? So Latinx, as Angelica was saying, is a gender neutral term for people of Latin American descent, right? And it emphasizes that inclusivity across all gender communities, right? So it's commonly used within like academia and activist spaces. So if you want to utilize like that all-encompassing term, then Latinx definitely is one of those neutral terms that you can utilize. Hispanic, it refers to people from Spanish-speaking countries or of Spanish heritage. It includes Spain, but excludes Brazil and other non-Spanish speaking Latin American countries, right? So focuses primarily on language. And it's so interesting to me how like these different terms kind of come about. Like growing up, I was always like, okay, like am I Hispanic? Am I Latino? Am I Mexican American? Like there's so
Right.
much to it, but
Yeah.
then when you actually like get down to like the nitty-gritty of it, like there's reasons for why these different terms have been utilized, right? And in a sense, like certain ones we use them interchangeably, but at the end of the day, they don't necessarily like apply to all folks. So it's kind of
Yeah,
like being
that's true.
mindful of um how we're approaching and how we're using these terms, right? Because I could be speaking to a student or speaking to like a colleague or a relative or something, and be misidentifying what they actually might relate to. So kind of being aware and looking into the research. And then finally, like Latino, Latina, Latinx, it refers to people from Latin America, including Brazil, includes people from non-Spanish speaking countries in Latin America.
For sure. I was thinking about that as well. Like my parents, heck no, would not be using like Latinx, for example,
Mhm, mhm,
or even know what that term means. But I know with Latinx too that there's a lot of critique around
mhm,
that term as well because it is primarily like in academic spaces. I feel like that's come about. Or there's like Latine now. Like there's so many terms, right? But
mhm,
really is of um like we all may um what is it like identify with one over the other. And I reflect on, I feel like I've had different, like when I was in community college, I was, well, I still identify as Chicana, but now again, use it very much interchanging that with like Latina, Latinx, Mexican American, yeah, like
mhm,
there's a lot of different terms. But so again, why it matters, that it's not just all the fun and celebrations and the party, which can be true too. I know I feel like our people are we can throw a good party and celebration. But I think a moment again to recognize the complexity of Latinx cultures, the generations of migration, resistance, resilience, creativity, the community from like the language, music, all of it. And I think that it's always been a part of American history. Again, really encouraging folks to reflect on your own histories and um, what has shaped you in your journey, and especially in today's climate, wanting to recognize that there's a lot of systemic inequities, challenges, barriers, anti-immigrant rhetoric. Um, and I think now more than ever, at least for me, being unapologetic of where I come from, and challenging those stereotypes and um yeah, so I think again it's more than just a celebration, but really a moment maybe to educate others, challenge these different narratives that are going around, and really honor our people, the future as well, because our stories matter. And I think we see the impact of sharing their stories,
mhm.
um, and more than ever to be seen for who we are. I think again, um, a moment to really understand and also see our shared history and experience as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's like the way I think about it too, it's also about like kind of putting myself back into like the seat of a student or someone that's still trying to come up and, work towards success and whatever that success looks like to people, right? It could be success within education, success within, work or upward social mobility, whatever it is, right? And when it comes to like that that term success, like do we belong, right? It's always a question of
Yeah.
do we belong within these spaces? But the
Ooh,
recognition of
mhm,
Latinx
mhm,
Heritage
mhm.
Month is that we do belong, right? And that we
Yeah,
have been here and we've been
serious.
doing this
Yeah.
work, um, and kind of reaffirming that, right? Because I think often like that can get lost, especially within like the
Hmm,
system
hmm.
of higher education, which
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily built for people like us, but
Yeah.
we've been resilient and we've been, making progress towards, the goals that we have for ourselves. So, definitely, kind of reflecting on when it gets a little bit tough and when we start questioning like whether or not we're supposed to be within these spaces, especially when the messaging within, our media or within even our, political figures is that we don't, just knowing that, we're still here and we're
Period.
making noise and we're not going anywhere, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly. Can I add to that? Yeah,
yeah,
like that
absolutely.
totally, that is the piece that we do belong. And yes, that it can be, and even if maybe this hasn't been your experience, that there are spaces, yeah, and just like in this climate that we are made to feel like we don't belong.
Hmm.
Um, and that we are challenging that, and the more we learn about ourselves, where we come from, our roots, that could help determine where we want to go, right,
Hmm.
in the future, and contribute to the sense of belonging. And I think that's the piece that maybe sometimes they don't want us to know about
Yep.
ourselves or our future, or erasing
Hmm.
these stories, because they know with that comes the power of like we know where we come from. But
Hmm.
sometimes I think they don't want us to know where we come from. And that, yeah, contributes to that not having the sense of belonging and feeling the imposter syndrome that can be really real when navigating higher ed, especially as first gen, right? Students, professionals, and these really scary new spaces.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, sorry, I had to add that before I
No.
forget. Because yeah, very good point of like that sense of belonging.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it goes hand in hand as to why we're doing this Platica or why we even,
Yes.
came up with this series and have been doing it for a couple of semesters now, right? I think that the purpose of this Platica, but also Pláticas Poderosas as a podcast is to create that space where, faculty, staff, students, the Skyline community, but also our community as a whole, whether it's, here within San Bruno, but also the Bay Area as a whole, just in general, like we could come together and we can, reaffirm that we do belong within these spaces, right? And to have that representation within these, within the educational environment, right? I think it's so easy to kind of go through college and not really have folks that you can relate to or that you can see like, oh, they kind of they went through it, they know what I'm feeling, but this is our opportunity to kind of highlight those folks. So hopefully today everyone gets to learn a little bit about us as well, and you can kind of see like maybe some things that you relate to and know that we're not scary, right? We're not scary. We're counselors, yes, but we've also been students. We've been in the classroom,
Yes.
sitting in those at the desk. We've walked the halls. Um, Me personally, I even went to Skyline, so
This
we'll,
is
we'll
true,
jump into
yeah.
it. We'll jump into it a little bit more. But I'm glad that we do have this space to kind of speak to, these different topics.
Yeah. Yeah, could it, like you said, like it could be really scary and intimidating, and lonely. I think
Hmm.
thinking that you're the only one that's experiencing, um, I don't know, right? Navigating new systems, being in the class, feeling like you don't belong. But know that you're definitely not alone, that many of us have shared similar experiences. Yeah, that it really is. It's hard, but I want for our students to know that they're definitely not alone.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, that they're not alone, but also that, it is possible. Yes, college is hard, it's difficult.
yeah,
It takes a lot of time, energy, and
yeah,
it can elicit a bunch of different emotions, but at the end of the day,
yeah.
it is something that can be achievable, right? And I think that us too and other colleagues and other people that have gone through it are a testament of that, right?
Oh,
So I don't know, do you want to kind of start off by sharing a little bit about your story?
oh yes, I definitely can. Um, you let me know, I guess, where I should stop. There's a lot. But I think main points being, well, a little bit about my background. My parents are both from Mexico, from Jalisco. They're both from the same rancho. Migrated here in the 90s and then had me. Um, I'm the first in my family. I'm the oldest as well. Um, so I started my academic journey in community college, actually. I went to Ohlone in the East Bay. So I was there for 3 years and then transferred to UCLA, where I majored in sociology and minored in Chicana studies. Um, but really, for me, what was super transformative, um, yeah, like community college for me was a transformative experience, and I learned a lot about myself, my identity. Um, my first year, I really struggled, and I think it was because I had no community, was so lost, didn't know what I wanted to major in. Um, and I remember was a really like low point of like figuring out what I wanted to do. I was also working like at Target. So navigating and juggling of like work and um, family expectations as well around like, well, what are you gonna do, right? And feeling the weight of that, of like being the first and also wanting to help my family who have sacrificed so much, right? For me and my siblings. I have three younger siblings. Um, so I think there was a lot, and I always just felt like I cannot fail my family, right? And what does that look like? And for me, higher education was like that door of like advancing, right? Of like helping my family. Um, so I think what really turned it around for me was my second year. I took a sociology. I also took like a Chicana studies class. Um, and it opened, oh my gosh, my mind was blown because I think I never had taken a class around like our history of like Chicano studies, Mexican American history. Because in high school we didn't have those types of classes. And I think for me, I realized like it was much bigger of like I started really looking at why like people like me aren't navigating the higher ed system, the challenges, the obstacles, and I feel like I could relate to that of like, yeah, that's true, of having to juggle so much. Um, but that again, the reminder that it's not me, it's like these systems were not created for me, right? So it takes extra work to have to ask for help, to identify the support systems because it's there, right? At least I realized like later, I'm like, the support is there, but it required that I take that initiative. Um, so I think for me, that was that turning point and feeling proud of being Chicana and um, realizing that there are other things at work that make it difficult to navigate and never thought that I was UC eligible. That was another piece. So when I was looking at transfer, I never in my wildest dreams like was like, oh, I'm gonna apply here. But I had friends who were applying to these top UCs and encouraged me to apply. And I saw myself in that, but I was like, oh my God, if my girl can apply, she's Chicana, she's like me, sociology, I can do that too. Um, and in my PIQs, shared my story, gave a little bit more insight, right? Being first gen, Latina. Um, so yeah, and then transferred
Mm.
to UCLA. And to me, I it made me so proud because I knew I was doing it for my family, that no one in my ancestors would have never thought I'd be at UCLA. You know what I mean? Like that to me was more of like, wow, like I'm going to this huge institution. Um, that never my grandparents or my great grandparents would have never had this opportunity as a Latina, as a woman, all of that, right? So it just was a lot more. But it was funny, my parents, like, they didn't really care. Because to them, they didn't, again, my parents don't even know, like, UCLA, right? The prestige of that institution. Um, and they didn't want me to go. That was its own drama of like, why do you want to go so far away? Like, why can't you stay local? You're trying to leave us. Like that, all the gender norms, right? Because my parents were a little bit more traditional.
Yeah.
Um, so that in itself was complicated, but once we were able, I was able to express to them of like, y'all don't get it. Like it's my dream school, but also like it's yeah, like it meant a lot to me. And um yeah, it was proud for me of like being able to take them as well of like visiting the campus. And again, they'd never have done seen something like that because I'm the first in my family.
Mhm.
Um so yeah, so I think my why has always been my family and that within has a lot of imposter syndrome too, but I was able to graduate as a transfer student at UCLA, and then later I get my master's, and um, all of that is has been hard as the first, but realizing that the community I'm surrounded with, I'm not alone.
Mhm. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And I can relate so much to like various different aspects of your story.
Yeah.
Um, and before I kind of jump into like sharing a little bit about myself, that there was a something that you mentioned that I was like, man, that's so true. And I hope that we can speak to this a little bit more. But you said higher education as a form of advancement, right? And as a form of kind of, hopefully setting yourself up in a way where, there's that upward social mobility, also you know, you don't have to kind of go through some of the struggles that unfortunately our ancestors had to go through, right? And I think that's a big piece of why a lot of our students might also be going into higher education, right? Um, Whether it's to get that degree, to build some skills, but also to get those hopefully good paying jobs, right? Um, at least for me as well, like going into that educational experience, like that was a big weight on my shoulders because I knew that I had to I had to advance. I had to set myself self up in a way where I would be able to provide for myself and my family.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a lot of pressure too. It's a lot of pressure, but it's a lot of pressure that a good amount of our students are coming in with. So I don't know if you want to speak a little bit more about that, speak about like, some of the pressure that comes with.
I can totally speak about the pressure, but Manny, you tell us about your academic journey. Do you want to
Okay.
share a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah, definitely. I could share. I think it kind of goes hand in hand with what I'm trying to get at. But yeah, very
Yeah.
similarly to you, my parents originally from Mexico, from Jalisco, a little pueblito near Guadalajara, a couple hours away. They were born and raised there. And then they ultimately made the decision to come over to the United States, hopefully seeking, better opportunities, right? Similar to a lot of folks, I'm assuming, they leave their home country and everything that they know in order to try to make a life for themselves and for their families, right? And I think that was the goal that my parents had in mind when they came here, right? So they got here, they started working very physically demanding jobs. Whether it was my dad, he worked in the fields for a little bit, so he was kind of like out there, picking some of like the produce that you see on the shelves at the grocery store. So he did that for a bit when he initially came. My mom was working at like a laundry factory, doing a bunch of like different things there. But ultimately, they had me and my siblings. I am the middle child, so not the oldest, but middle child. That comes with its own set of
It
challenges
does.
and
I'm already judging. I'm
yeah, right.
judging you. I'm like middle
Exactly.
children.
Exactly. So I was definitely I was a bit of a troublemaker, but
As
um
all middle children are, I feel
exactly.
like.
Exactly. Exactly.
Sorry to our students who are middle children,
So
but I feel like birth order
it
does kind
it
of
definitely
bad.
does. And if you're a middle child, you know what I'm talking about. Um, but you know, like we were talking about, my parents, they put a lot of emphasis on education, right? And they wanted
Yeah,
myself and my siblings to be able to pursue the opportunities that they didn't have at their disposal, right? Because my parents went to school, but they only made it up to like about, like middle school, or what the equivalent to middle school is in Mexico. Um, and then they came and they started working, right? So their opportunities were very, very limited, but they viewed it as a forms of us going through and being able to advance. So we didn't have to work those physically intensive jobs anymore, right? I'm gonna be honest, school wasn't always something that, I enjoyed or that I saw myself within, right? High school years were very difficult to say the least because I think at that time, one, I didn't see school as something that was for me. I was always searching like what's that instant gratification, right? Whether it was hanging out with friends or trying to make a quick buck, working part-time, something like that, right? So school was kind of always at the on the back end, but in the back of my head, I was always like, dang, but my parents really want this for me, right? And I also understand how it could open up like other opportunities. So post high school, I was like, okay, I'll go to community college. I'll see what's up. I'll try it out for a little bit. If it works out, it works out. If it doesn't, it doesn't. Came to Skyline back in the day. I won't say when because it was a little while ago. I'm not too old, but um,
you are not. You're not.
I'm a little older. I'm a little older now. It's been a little while since I was when I first started community college. Let's say
Yeah.
but the first couple of years within community college, I was still within that headspace that school wasn't necessarily for me. And I think a lot of it had to do with just like overall experiences that I had within education. Like I had some not so great experiences with teachers within high school that kind of reinforced that message that I wasn't meant to be there, and it was reflected within like my grades or if I show I always say this to my students, if I showed you my transcript from when I first started here, you just see a bunch of like W's, F's, D's, so on and so forth. But ultimately, I was able to turn it around through having better experiences with a counselor that I was able to see myself within and that actually believed in me. So that's another part of it. Like we need those folks within these different
Matters.
experiences that are going to you know bring out our potential because
Yeah.
sometimes we don't always see the potential within ourselves. So when I, got a little bit more serious, then that's when I started to succeed. Transferred to SF State, got my bachelor's there, and then I was like, oh, that counselor was cool. I kind of want to do that.
Yeah.
Made a little pivot, got my master's in counseling, and now we're here, right? So a bunch of ups and downs in terms of my educational experience. So if folks out there are listening in and they can relate, yo, you're not alone. Like
Yeah.
you you might see us as like your counselors that are doing it and they have their jobs, but at the end of the day, like, we went through challenges too, and you know,
And that it's not a linear like path sometimes. That
exactly.
yeah, like you said, there are the ups and the downs, some breaks in between too.
Mhm.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah. I get that a lot with students that are first coming in. They're like,
Mhm.
I want to do this. I want to get out of here in 2 years. Like this is my timeline, and I had to stick to my timeline. And I'm like, I think that's great. Um, but also knowing that sometimes, that if that's not the case, then it's okay too. Like if
Yeah,
my
that's
experience is
totally
if I can speak to my experience, like, shoot, I was here almost 5 years on and off before transferring out, but it ultimately worked out. I think that, that fear of not keeping up with like these social norms or like these timelines that are set can often, put more pressure on students or kind of hold them back even more so.
that piece right there. The pressure we put on ourselves, especially well, even myself and students as well, that they kind of compare themselves, right? Of like
Mm,
to friends, family who maybe are transferring earlier or have different timelines. But there's so many factors that
mm,
contribute to that as well. And that our grades, our timeline is not a reflection of our ability,
mm.
capacity, but it's hard to see that,
No,
right? But that we are more than just that, than our academics,
absolutely.
right? That we all have life sometimes that happens, and our majors can be different, experiences, all of that that contribute to our journeys and our timelines. And
Yeah.
yeah, because I find it same, like of like comparing my journey to my friends, right, who are at different stages in their own academic journeys, and um, can be hard. And again, adds to that negative self-doubt and imposter syndrome of
Mhm.
like, well, I'm not smart enough, or why did it take me, right, longer than my friends, and look at them, and can ultimately do more harm than
No.
good sometimes. You know?
Yeah. I always tell my students, I'm like, you're not just a student. You're a
Yeah.
whole human being with a life outside of the classroom. Some of you are working, some of you are taking care of your family members. You have
Oh,
so much going on that all contributes how you show up within these different spaces, right?
that
How
is,
you're able to manage and balance, whether it's schoolwork, whether it's work. And I know like for example, for myself, like when I was at Skyline, I was also working pretty much full time as a server, right? Out of necessity and having to pay bills and try to help out a little bit around the house. So that's another aspect to it.
yeah,
But I think what's also important to recognize is that oftentimes these things are viewed as deficits, but it's not a deficit. It's just part
yeah,
part of your journey and your experience that's actually building on various different skills and strengths that you
yeah,
already have that you can then
yeah,
utilize in the classroom, right?
exactly, exactly. That's already built in and maybe not recognized in these academic settings or in the classroom. But yeah, it adds to, like you said, because you mentioned earlier, you had asked me around like the pressures,
Hmm.
right, that we experience. I think you touched upon like, yeah, having to work and juggle family responsibilities, and you have all these different identities that are equally as important. And
Hmm.
sometimes being a student takes the backseat, and that's okay.
Hmm.
Um, but it's hard when you're in the classroom, and sometimes your teachers aren't as understanding
Yeah.
about those things, or having to prioritize family needs over school can be really hard and difficult because sometimes our own goals may not align with the financial need, family, right? That was a big piece. I also worked during college. I worked at Target. As a
Oh, sorry.
cashier, y'all. So I recognize the cashier struggle, guest service struggle. But then then I worked in human resources at Target. So they moved me to the back. Probably because they're like, this girl does not sell route cards. Let's put her to back, way in the back. Um, but having to work, juggle school, family, and it's like that pressure of like you want to obviously do well. You need to do well, right? To attain your academic goals and to support family as well. Because I'm like, I don't want to put that financial struggle on my parents because they already have my younger siblings as well.
Mm,
So I was paying for my own classes. I messed up, y'all. I would not, we didn't have a promise program back in my school, but I never applied to financial aid. I didn't do the Fast Forward California Dream Act. And again, it's because I didn't know. And I just assumed I make more money. I was just like, no, they probably wouldn't give me anything, and I didn't even apply. So I would pay my classes out of pocket. So trying to balance of like making enough money to go to school, be enrolled full time, and like spending money on transportation. It was just like a lot of different things. Um, yeah,
yeah.
that can sometimes conflict with our own goals and realizing I had to reflect with my own grades. So I was like, oh, this isn't
Mhm.
um because in high school I was a pretty good student, but I think community college really, I was like, it was a wake up call of like, oh my gosh, I need to study, actually study. I need to learn how to do these things. Because no one is, I feel like for me at least, no one really taught me of like time management, study, organization. It was like as I was in it and seeing other folks, I'm like, okay, maybe if that works for them, maybe it works for me. And
Yeah,
it's a big adjustment.
yeah.
Um, so I feel for our students who are like struggling and trying to find what works best for them, right? But this is the time to do that. And I think why I appreciated my time at community college to really explore not only my identity, but learn more about the type of like learner I am too. Um, that it at least for me felt a lot different
Yeah.
and then navigating like family responsibilities and things like that. So
Mhm.
again, that everyone's journey is gonna look different.
Yeah, and I'll say that the fact that for our student listeners, the fact that you made the decision to start your academic journey is evidence enough that one, this is a priority for you,
Yeah.
and two, that you know you're you'll be able to achieve that goal. Yes, it is difficult to balance all of these different things, but also knowing that there is a lot of support and a lot of resources available to you so that you don't have to do it alone. One of our counselors always says, or one of the promise counselors always says that it takes a village, right? It takes a village. Yes, you could try to do it all by yourself, but it's gonna be that much more difficult, and the length and the amount of time is also gonna take a little bit more because you're juggling various different aspects. But if you do it with other folks and you're connecting with your counselors and tapping into the resources that are available to you, then it just makes it a little easier. In terms of the financial aid, if you're listening and you haven't done your FAFSA
That's
application
true.
for 25, 26, and the upcoming 26, 27 one, do that now
Do
because
it.
even if you think you're not eligible or you haven't been eligible in the past, the FAFSA application, you're going to need that if you want to apply to scholarships,
And California Dream
grants,
Act.
other opportunities that you might be eligible for. So definitely do that. Um, but and you touched on this a little bit when you were speaking to your experience, Angelica. I think it also goes to what that motivation is to continue. Oftentimes, and I know from my personal experience, when things got hard, I would reflect on why it was that I was doing it in the first place. And you mentioned it, your why. Do you mind, and I'll share a little bit about my why as well, but do you mind kind of, sharing with viewers your why and how it helped you kind of get over some of those challenges?
I think my why continues and within higher education as well is my family.
Mm,
Um, I think that's always been one of um I come from a very close knit family culture. Um, so I think being the first and the oldest and navigating these very unfamiliar territories. No one in my family had gone through college. Um, but my parents have always worked really hard.
mhm,
Um, since I was little, I've seen that. I've seen their sacrifices, their struggle, and that they always put my siblings um, before their needs. And I think I always carried that of like I wanted to make my family proud. Um, even though they made it sometimes, even though sometimes they were a part of the problem, low key, and I was like, y'all causing more obstacles for me and maybe not being as understanding. I think that was true too. Sometimes I was like, why don't you all just understand. But they were also going through this with me, right? But I think for me, and maybe I don't, honestly, I probably don't tell my parents this as much, but they've always been my why, my family of like wanting to make them proud, um, wanting them to be have that financial liberation and security. And again, that higher ed had always been that for me. So when I've navigated challenging courses or learning something new for the first time within school, I always thought back of like, I can do this. Like, I just need to ask for help. Um, that this is greater than me. So I think I always carry that of like, and now more, even like through my master's program, um, or just any new job, right? Or when that self-doubt creeps in, or the challenges, right? Obstacles, I think back of like how strong my mom is, how resilient
mm,
my mom is, and that she's never given up. Um, and my ancestors also, right? But their ability to thrive through the different obstacles and challenges in life, and that how can't, that it's greater, you know what I mean? So all of those things. So for me, my why has always been my family. And I also, when I meet with my students, sometimes I mention of like when you are going through challenging courses, right, that you need to think about, well, why are you here, right? Like, why are you doing this?
mhm,
What is, because through that, that can be motivation, right,
mhm,
to
mhm.
help overcome these challenges and obstacles.
Yeah.
For me, so yeah, for me, it's a big motivating factor for my what success, right, of like is for my family and provide them um a future that we didn't have when I was younger.
So,
Um yeah, because my parents now are retired, both of them. Um and living their lives, right? They go
yeah.
back and forth between Mexico. So I do kind of feel that pressure of like, oh God, like I need to have my stuff together now, right? And like, because I don't want them to have to worry about me. So that's kind of like now my older problems and thoughts. But when I was younger, it really wasn't like, yeah. Um, and now I will say like all my younger siblings have all graduated from college too, some of the top universities. So that's something that I'm really proud of like that I was able to support them. Maybe they don't recognize that, but my sister graduated. We're all transfer students, but my sister graduated from Berkeley, my brother from Essex State, and is now like computer software engineer. And
Nice.
my other sister graduated from Stanford. So that we've all gone through these different systems, and
Mhm.
it's support, it's family, and that we all support one another and not alone through this process.
Yeah.
And that I can be a part of our student support team too, of like that you're not alone
Yeah.
in these spaces.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that yeah, I mean, I agree completely. And I was going to say that my why is also my family, but I think you touched on another important point, which is that yes, family and loved ones can serve as that source of motivation to continue, but sometimes they might be a source of even more stress and they might
Yeah,
they might contribute to some of like those feelings of overwhelm that we might get during this process. And I think I see this a lot when I'm working with students, like either that are thinking, exploring their majors, or, that they're still thinking about potential careers. Sometimes what their family and loved ones are saying that doesn't necessarily align with
it's
what it is
true.
that they want. So that kind of causes a little bit of a rift, right? And that causes more pressure. But what I always say is that it's important to remember that it's all coming from a place of love, right? It's coming from a place of love and from wanting what's best for you. So having those conversations around, okay, how can we come to some sort of, you know, either agreement or just like being able to have those conversations of like, hey, this is a lot on me already, and I know that you want to support and you want to be there for me, but how can we get on the same page, right? So yeah, and like very similarly, like my why and my motivator has always been my family. When I was feeling that imposter syndrome in the classroom, when my classmates were using a bunch of big words that I had no idea what they were saying, and I was like, what am I even doing in here? I always thought back, like, no, I'm doing this for a bigger purpose, for something that's higher than me, because I want to make sure that I'm making my parents proud, and I'm able to hopefully, support them in the long term, right? Um, so it's just, kind of remembering why it is that you started this journey in the first place, and making sure that you are on the same page with, your different support systems. Oftentimes it's just lack of communication where things can kind of get lost in translation. Um, but yeah, I agree completely. I know that we only have a couple of minutes left, but I did want to kind of bring it back to like the importance of Latinx heritage. And I think for, our last question, I'd love to, I know that we recently did a check-in question with our Promise team, and we talked about like the importance of tradition. And I think tradition is important because it keeps our culture alive, and it reminds us of our roots, and within those reminders, it also can serve as motivation as well, right? So I know we talked a little bit about like what can we speak to, whether it was bringing in an item or just talking to certain traditions that we hold like near and dear to us. So I don't know, do you want to share a little bit about, what you're thinking in terms of like those
Want to
traditions
share?
that you keep, that your family keeps, and that you hope to keep for the future and the future generations?
I know I love this question. I thought about a lot of, um, at least for me, because I have a lot of family that lives in Mexico,
Hmm.
and again, I mentioned kind of my parents now are retired. They're kind of like going back and forth now. Um, but I do have a lot of family still in Mexico, and I was there recently, and it was just a reminder of like how important it is to stay connected to Mexico in this case, or where my parents are both from the same rancho. So for me, staying connected to, yeah, just the community, the the land, nature, and going there, it always feels um so relaxing, and I think I always feel so grounded when I go visit, but I'm always sad because of life, right? Like that I don't get to visit as often, and when I go, it's just like time has just flown by, and I just keep getting older and older. But I think for me, that's something important that I want to carry is to continue to visit,
Mm,
um, and yeah, to just like carry on the traditions of that pueblo and community. Also speaking Spanish,
mm,
practicing Spanish as well. I could definitely do a lot better with that. But also the food, the music, right? All of that of like that I always think I have enough time of like, oh, learning how to make certain dishes and um, but I'm like, no, right? Like time is so precious and life is so short that I need to spend as much time with my family as possible.
mm,
And that now that I'm at a place, maybe that's a little bit more financially secure, that I have now the ability of like giving back and um spending more time with
yeah.
family. So I don't know. I think a lot about the music, the food, visiting Mexico, speaking Spanish. Those are things that I want to carry and continue and not lose.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
about
Absolutely.
you?
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love that. I know for me, like when I was growing up, we used to go to Mexico all the time.
Yeah,
Like summer
same.
vacations, we'd spend our entire summers out there. We'd go to like
Yeah.
the pueblito where my parents are originally from, but also Guadalajara. And unfortunately, I haven't been in like 12 years.
It be
Like,
like that. Time just
yeah,
goes by. Yeah.
exactly. Work, school, and all these other
Yeah.
responsibilities. But I definitely do want to continue to go and to show love to my roots and
Yes. Yeah.
remember what it is where my ancestors came from and I don't think that I would be in the position that I am today here speaking to like these different things as a counselor and like you said a little bit more financially secure unless it was through the sacrifices and the work that went into um you know building the family and like my ancestors. So I think for me like in terms of tradition and keeping that alive, it's definitely through the food and also through the music. I think for me, like those are two of the things that, keep me grounded within my culture. Um, like if I showed you my Spotify playlist, like you'd see banda, corridos, mariachi, like all of that, right? And the majority of the music that I listen to is, like you know, regional Mexican music or just
Yeah. Yeah.
from music from my home country. And also the food like my mom's cooking like that's huge to me, right? And I think the answer that I shared within our team meeting was that what I would want to do in order to keep those traditions alive would be to create a cookbook with my mom's recipes and to
You
make
did
sure
say
that
that.
I can keep like the flavor of her dishes alive to for generations to come. And I always say that the way to my heart is through my stomach, and definitely being able to not only like enjoy a meal that was cooked for me by my mom, but also being able to cook that for my future kids and things like that. So yeah, I think that
All the
it's
love that goes into
yeah,
that, right?
exactly showcasing that love and community through like our traditions. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And it's important to record a lot of this. And I think that's the piece of like it gets lost sometimes.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, you gotta start that cookbook.
Absolutely. No, I got to get on that. I've been saying
Yeah,
it for like years now, and then like
manifest it. Keep saying it.
there you
Yeah,
go.
like
It's also hard because I don't know about you or like other folks' experiences. Like Um, like folks, like OG folks that have been in the kitchen for a while, they don't even use measurements. They just kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
they go by like, oh, it needs a little bit more
Yeah.
of this. So I'm like, wait, hold on, like what do I need to incorporate here? But we'll make it
Love
happen.
that. Yeah, I love that for you.
Awesome. Well, I know that we are at time, but
We
any final
are.
messages for our students before we head on out of here?
I guess for me, happy Latinx Heritage Month, y'all. And I hope that you all know that you are not alone. And that you can always reach out. If you want to learn more or continue the plática, and that you have a community of people that are rooting for you and are here to support with whatever you need. That it could be really hard and challenging sometimes. And again, all our experiences are gonna look different, right? But that I hope this sheds a little bit of light that we too are not just counselors,
Yeah.
right? That we're also in this figuring it out
Mhm.
and have navigated similar journeys and that you can always turn to us even if you're not a part of our our cult caseload.
Yeah.
um and we're here to support.
Yeah. No, I agree completely. I think, like you said, even if we're not your designated counselors and you don't meet
Yeah.
with us as consistently, I hope that, you were able to relate to our experiences, or maybe you heard something and you were like, that makes a lot of sense. So please feel free to reach out to us. Know that you have a community of support here at Promise, but also at Skyline as a whole, and that we want to see you succeed. We want to see what's best for you, and we want to make sure that, we're doing what we need to do in order to support you towards the goals that you might have for yourself. So,
I hope everyone has a good day.
yeah, have a good
Uh,
rest of your day.
yeah, I was gonna say we didn't get to talk about y'all. Like Bad Bunny is the Super Bowl performer.
Oh,
So
that's right.
speaking of Latinx excellence, y'all viewers, go hear a Bad Bunny song
There
in honor.
you go. Definitely pop on one of those songs and even watch the Super Bowl performance. Support our
Or who
Latinx
knows how to
folks.
get to the stadium. I need to know how I'm gonna be at Levi.
Oh, that's gonna be crazy on that day, Super Bowl day.
I know.
Yeah, you're gonna have to take the train or
Next
something.
episode, we're gonna talk about it. But bye, y'all.
All right, y'all. Hopefully we get to check in soon. Have a great rest of your day, everyone. Happy Latinx Heritage Month.